It is 6 o'clock. As most of you know, my name is Dr. Tammy Hodo. I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Florida Coastal School of Law. First, I would like to say thank you very much for coming tonight. Tonight we have the honor of having Judge Salvador, who is a judge of the 4th Circuit Court of Florida. She was appointed by Governor Rick Scott on November 30th, 2012, and she took office in January of 2013. Judge Salvador has also been re-elected and will stay on the bench for a minimum until 2021. She received her bachelor's degree from Duke University and her JD degree from the University of Florida. From 1994 to 2001, she served as an assistant state attorney. From 2001 to 2012, she was an attorney at Rogers Towers, and since then she has been a judge with the 4th Circuit Court. She began the practice of law in 1994, serving as an assistant state attorney in the 4th Circuit, prosecuting all types of crimes from misdemeanors to murders in Clay, Duval, and Nassau counties. Thereafter, in 2001, she entered the private practice of law with the law firm of Rogers Towers, PA, one of Jacksonville's oldest and largest law firms. Her legal practice primarily focused on civil litigations of all types: commercial, banking, probate, estate, and family law. In 2014, she became a shareholder in the firm and remained at the law firm until she was elevated to the bench in 2003. In addition to her legal and judicial practice, Judge Salvador has been involved in numerous community organizations and in various leadership capacities, including Jacksonville Area Legal Aid Board Member, City of Jacksonville Ethics Commission, Vice Chair, Leadership Jacksonville Board Member, and graduate of the class of 2004 Hispanic Bar Association, founding member and past president of One Jacks Inc., board member and past president for Wilson Children's Hospital and women's board member. So without further ado, please help me welcome Judge Salvador.
Good evening, everybody. This is so formal standing behind here, and you're all so far away. This is what it must be to be a law school professor trying to get the students to sit up closer. Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for coming. I am excited to be here to speak to you all and really to answer questions you have about legal career, legal advancement. I heard from one of you who has an interest in becoming a judge. And I guess I can tell you, or you've already heard a little bit about my path and how I got here. But I'll share with you a secret. I didn't always think I wanted to be a judge. In fact, that was not on my radar. When I was in law school, had these grand plans to do international law because, of course, I'm Latina, I speak Spanish, and my parents are from Colombia, and I took French in school, so I thought, well, naturally, I speak languages, I must do international law. What I didn't know is that did not involve any type of courtroom activity. International law sounds glamorous. It doesn't involve necessarily a lot of travel, which is what I also thought it would. It's mostly transactional, and of course, as you all know here being in law school, you will sort of have to pick a path of what you like. What is your passion? What do you want to do in law school? There are those who want to be the litigators, who want to have that courtroom experience. They want to have trials, they want to appear in front of a judge, they want to represent their client in court to resolve their issues and their problems. And that's great. You've got those who absolutely never want to step foot in a courtroom, but they love helping their clients resolve issues, whether it be in business or in family, drafting documents, researching the law, solving those very intellectual and perhaps complicated problems. And there's more, of course, but that's all well and good. And so, at least from my perspective, I knew I wanted to be a litigator, and so international law was not it for me. And in law school, what I did, and what I suggest you do, is take those opportunities to be involved in different groups and organizations, be it trial team or moot court or anything else that's offered, to see if truly that is what your passion is. And so having done that in law school, my first job straight out of law school was an assistant state attorney here in Jacksonville. And as you heard, we began prosecuting the misdemeanors in county court. And you get that trial experience and you work your way up to then circuit court where you're trying the felonies, to then of course ultimately trying the murder cases. And it's a great experience if that is what you like to do, to get that trial work, to learn the rules of evidence. You will become a pro on the rules of evidence if trial work is what you'd like to do. And so that's what I did for about 7.5 years until I thought, well, I need to expand my horizons now and let me do something other than criminal law, because I also knew I wasn't going to be a career prosecutor. And so I switched gears, almost like starting over. And it was scary. All change is scary. But I again implore you and suggest to you that don't let that hold you back. Don't think that the first job you have out of law school either is going to be the same job or the type of legal work that you're going to be doing until you retire. That's the beauty of this profession, is that you are constantly evolving, ever learning, and so you can switch gears. You can change it up. You can go from litigation to transaction if that's what you're interested in. But I chose to then focus on civil litigation matters, and that's really such a broad area that can encompass medical malpractice, construction litigation, business torts, auto negligence, slip and falls, all type premises liability, those types of things. And so I started working in that field and even branching off to do family law and probate and estate litigation. And so with my 12 years at Rogers Towers, that gave me again a breadth of experience that had I just done criminal or had I just done one other area, I wouldn't have gotten. And that's what I think positioned me perfectly to then apply for a judicial vacancy that occurred due to a judge retiring. And so that I could then confidently say when I interviewed in front of the Judicial Nominating Committee and in the governor's office, that I had practiced in criminal and civil and family and probate. Those were 4 of the 5 areas that a circuit judge presides over. And so I think that is what ultimately caused the governor to appoint me, to my great surprise and excitement. And so now, as a circuit court judge, I have sat the last 3 years on the criminal bench, now presiding over all level of felonies, from robbery, burglary, up to homicide. And just this year, I've now switched to the civil division. So now I'm seeing those med mal cases and construction litigation cases and business torts. And I think that is what the beauty of law is all about. There is such a wide variety of areas that you can experience and learn about, and you become almost like a little mini expert in all these fields. I can't tell you how much I've learned about construction, an area that I had absolutely no knowledge about. But boy, do I know about weather shielding and window problems and everything. Homeowners associations, who knew? I don't live in one, and now I know all the laws about homeowners associations. And so that is the beauty of it. And I think that's something that not everyone, especially perhaps law students, might realize. And so here I am today. But it's not just due to, of course, what I'm sure everyone will tell you, hard work and dedication. It's also due to involvement in the community. I mean, you are not, and you cannot remain in a bubble when you are going through school, when you're seeking a job, because I will tell you that any firm you go to, any employer that you seek out, they of course are going to look at how you did in school and what your grades were and what type of law are you practicing, where were your summer internships or clerkships. But they're also going to look to see, well, what value is this person going to add to our firm? What do they do outside of the law? What do they do in the community that adds value to our area and our community? Because that is what firms are also looking at. They want someone who is, we'll call the full package, that isn't just the good law student or just the good lawyer, but somebody who is involved in a lot in our community. And so that is truly one of the reasons that I picked to go to the firm that I worked at when I left the state attorney's office, because they valued that so highly. In fact, as an associate, you could bill 2,500 hours, some crazy working schedule. But if you didn't have your 100 hours a year of pro bono community work, community service, you didn't get a bonus. And so I thought, wow, these people are really putting their money where their mouth is. And so knowing that, I chose to go work there. And I'll tell you, every single attorney in that firm, and it was 100 lawyers when I was there, everybody had some board, some organization, some community group that they were passionate about and that they were involved in. And that taught me a great deal. And that resulted in me then going out and doing those things. And I would recommend and suggest that to you all. Now you have your various groups and clubs here. It doesn't end when you graduate from law school. When you leave law school, when you enter that working world, there are just as many, both legal and non-legal. And I recommend to you to find those that interest you. If you're interested in diversity and in promoting respect and understanding of people of different races, religions, and cultures, well, there's a great organization called One Jacks. If you're interested in environment and beautification of our community, then there's Beautiful Jacksonville, or Jack's Pride is what it used to be called, Scenic Jacksonville, those organizations. Likewise, pro bono legal activity, then get involved in Jacksonville Area Legal Aid. Of course, there's the Jacksonville Bar Association, which is a great networking tool for lawyers in the community. But there's so many groups and organizations I could go on. The Chamber, if you're interested in business. And of course, there's the Hispanic Chamber, the Puerto Rican Chamber, and so much more. So that certainly is one element of your development, not only as a good lawyer, but as a good community trustee and as a good citizen. And so I would stress that perhaps more for your future development as well. So I could speak more, but I want to open up. I'm more than happy to answer questions of any of you, if anybody has anything they want to know about me and my career path, but more importantly too, about anything I can assist you with. Yes?
What would you say is the number one thing or the lasting thing that you continue to go back to since law school? Is there one thing that you go back to and say, you know, that's a skill, or that was something that I picked up when I got to law school, and it's something I always go back to in my career or throughout your career? Yes,
that's a great question. My first semester of law school, my Civ Pro teacher, I knew very little about civil procedure. I was just swirling in my head. But the one thing that he said that stuck with me, 3 simple words, and now I can appreciate it being on this side of the bench, is know thy judge. That's what he said. That's what he said. And truly, because to be effective for your client, when you appear in court, whether it's civil, criminal, family law, probate, obviously there are rules and laws that the judges must follow, but each of them have their very distinct and, sure, they all have their little quirks, they're all little ways that they like things done. And you can be so much more effective as a lawyer if you research and prepare ahead of time about what your judge might rule in that certain circumstance, or what your judge likes or doesn't like, and it just makes for a much more effective attorney. That's one of the things anyway, but that one really sticks with me, especially now, because what I find hilarious, I haven't been on the bench all that long compared to some of my brothers and sisters on the bench, but I'll have attorneys come before me and say, well, Your Honor, I know you don't like X, or I know you don't like Y, and I've never verbalized these things before, and I'm like, how do you know that I don't like that, or that I do like that? And they're like, well, we've asked around, we know. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And they're citing to me what I like and what I don't like. But you know what? That shows me these people are prepared, they know what they're doing, and that sticks with me. And hey, you want to be good, you want to be remembered, you want to get a good reputation, because that is all you will have at the end of the day. That's something to do. Any other questions? Yes.
Going on that question, I was told if you want to get to know a judge, you would ask the JAs. You might be able to find information off the website, but besides the JAs and the website, how would you research a judge that you were going to present before?
Well, good question. I would say you should reach out to lawyers who have practiced perhaps a little longer, who might be more familiar with the judge than, say, a new lawyer. And that kind of dovetails nicely into a mentor attorney. You know, I know a lot is often said about, finding a mentor or mentor-mentees. I know there's some in law school, and then when you get out, there's some for new judges or new attorneys. Let me tell you, that never ends. That never ends. When I was appointed as a new judge, I was assigned a mentor judge. You will and you should always have someone that you look up to, that you trust, both for their intellectual skills, but also just for their judgment, to be your mentor. Everyone should seek out and have a mentor. Here I am, 20 years of legal practice already, or more now, 20 years as an attorney and almost 4 years now as a judge. And I have had a mentor and still do have a mentor. So I would recommend that when you are going to go out into the world of practicing lawyers and you come across lawyers, if there's somebody who, impresses you and you like, I would say reach out, find yourself a mentor. The Jacks Bar Association has a group of lawyers who have signed up who are ready, willing, and able to be mentors to new lawyers. Even judges are ready, willing, and able to be mentors to new lawyers. To a certain degree. We can't have a conflict of interest there then if you appear in front of us. But that is something that is absolutely important. As I stand here today, I have mentor judges that I go to when I have a difficult question or decision that I have to make. I'm running down the hall to find my mentor judge. And that's something I think we take with us and should carry with us throughout our career. Yes?
When you were in ASA, what was one of the things that that you felt like really helped with your success at the state attorney's office?
Well, mentor. I had a mentor ASA who would try cases with me and then critique my performance after that. And it made me better. And of course, it's just natural by the nature of the job that you try so many cases. Probably more than anywhere else. The state attorney's office and the public defender's office are going to be the two areas. If you want to be a litigator, that's where you're going to try the most number of cases. You will become so comfortable in court. Like I said, you will become a master of the rules of evidence, more so than going to a private firm. Because quite frankly, we all know as a brand new associate or second or third or fourth year associate, it will be rare that you will actually be trying a case, even if you are in the litigation department. Because the client kind of rules and mandates what's what, and they want the senior partner, not the 2-year associate. But at the state attorney's office and PD's office, they don't have those luxuries. There's so much work to be done. You are thrown into trial your first month. I started, and in week 2, I had a DUI trial as a brand new attorney. But again, because I had a mentor, then I'm able to get critiqued, constructive criticism, and improve your skills that way. Mm-hmm. Yes?
You spoke that you went to the University of Florida.
Yes.
And that you got your first job here in Jacksonville. But then you said that, of course, as far as networking, the Jacksonville Bar Association is a good, resource. What exactly did you, organizations that you were a part of, in fact, at the University of Florida, that helped you to get your first job here?
Well, there's an organization here in Jacksonville called the Chester Bedell Inn of Court. It's a national, actually an international organization, the Inns of Court. It started in England. There's this whole long history about it. It has come to the U.S. and there are chapters all throughout the country. Jacksonville has one of those. I think Jacksonville's was the first in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. The Inns of Court is made up of what they call barristers, who are very senior lawyers. Then they have, masters are the top, the very senior folks. You got barristers who are lawyers, I think it's over 5 years. Associates who are lawyers from new to 5 years. And then they have pupils, and they are law students. And so when I was at University of Florida in Gainesville, I applied to the Jacksonville Chester Bedell Inn of Court, was accepted, and so once a month there is a dinner program. I mean, there's time for socializing, for dinner, but then there's an actual educational program where the attorneys actually get continuing legal education credits for attending it, obviously not as a law student. But attending those things was supremely beneficial because A, I was learning things in those education programs, but B, I was networking with senior lawyers, judges, and other attorneys, so that when I came to Jacksonville, they were not all completely foreign to me. And there are those organizations, here and elsewhere. So that was one that I can recall right off the top of my head. Yes?
Your Honor, my name is Shimon Edwards. I'm a second-year student at Coastal, a deputy sheriff and an intern at the state attorney's office. My question is that based on your experience in the different fields of law, which do you find to be a better trait? A lawyer that's a good speaker or one that is a great writer?
A great what?
Writer.
Ooh. Well, I guess that's a good question. I mean, both are important skills, but I guess it depends on what type of area you're going to practice. If you are a state attorney or a public defender, to be quite frank, you don't do that much writing. You have so many cases, you are in trials and hearings all the time, that perhaps that would be better to be a great speaker. You have to convince a jury of 6 or 12 to vote the way you're asking them to vote when they're deliberating. Now, in civil practice, or if you're going to do appeal work or transactional, writing clearly is very important. And now that I'm in civil, and I do have hearings, and obviously it's important to speak well at those, we do a lot of briefing. I read a lot of memorandums of law. I read a lot of pleadings, and I can't tell you when they are poorly written, I start glazing over, and it just does not have the same impact as a well-researched, well-written pleading. Then I go with an open mind, but I'm reading the two sides, and when I prepare for a hearing, I kind of initially, in my mind, decide what I want to do. And then when we go into the hearing, I'll see if any of their oral arguments might change my mind. But the writing is supremely important as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes.
Is the state attorney's office or the federal prosecutor's office open to students contacting them to get some type of exposure or networking within the groups?
Yes, in fact, I think both offices hire law students as summer interns and summer clerks. I do know that they do that, so I'm sure they'd be open to it, especially if it's free, because our budget doesn't allow for payment of much. But yes, they are open to that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Kind of playing off his question, what are maybe like the 2 or 3 biggest mistakes you see lawyers make in your courtroom or in a peer before you?
Good question. Number one, when they do not acknowledge or cite to me case law that is contrary to their position. I cannot tell you. They might make the best argument. They might be the best writer. And then I learn that there's a case that goes contrary to what they're saying. It totally blows their credibility with me. Completely. I so much more respect the attorney who says, Judge, here are the cases I'm relying on. This is what I think you should rule or how you should do. I will say there's a case out of the 4th that says contrary, but let me distinguish it this way. But they've mentioned it. They brought a copy of it for me to read, and they're not trying to hide it or run away from it. But very often, because let me tell you, I don't just rely on the lawyer's research. I will take the cases, but I do my own research. And if I find it, and you haven't given it to me, that's not good. That's not good. And because that, it might have been inadvertent. Maybe the research wasn't done well by that lawyer, but we don't know the reason, and we can only assume, and unfortunately, sometimes we just assume They're trying to hide the ball, they're not being very honest, and let me tell you, judges talk, so you don't want to start that reputation about somebody who isn't quite forthright with the law or with the court. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, you asked for 2 or 3 mistakes? Okay. That is one. Number 2, and I'm seeing this more surprisingly in civil court. You know, you think in criminal court, the stakes are so high. You're talking about people's lives and liberties. The attorneys get along marvelously. They are so cordial with each other. And I don't want to talk in generalities because it's not that way always. In civil, where, of course, stakes can be very high, it can be multi-million-dollar deals and whatnot, but oftentimes I have hearings over very minor discovery matters, and the attorneys are so hostile and adversarial with each other, it completely turns me off from both of them. There is no need, even though this is an adversarial system, obviously. That doesn't mean you have to be adversarial and hostile. There is no room for that. We expect professionalism and civility and nothing less than that. But oftentimes the attorneys will be bickering, and Sarah knows this from having interned with me. I sometimes feel like I'm the mom refereeing between my 10-year-old and my 12-year-old and get the little waggy finger and everything because all they do is bicker, and I have to quiet them down to just focus on the facts. There's really, I can't even think of a circumstance in which that is okay and appropriate to be so hostile and adversarial. So those are my 2 top biggies. Yeah. Yes.
My name is Dennis Reyes, 2L. What advice would you give a student who wants to be like a sole practitioner, but doesn't necessarily want to shadow a senior attorney for 3 years, compared to maybe taking an internship position with a judge? Which would you recommend?
You mean if you want to be a sole practitioner, what to do to prepare for that?
Right.
I don't know that being an intern for a judge would necessarily prepare you for that, because it's one thing to be on the side or working with a neutral arbiter. It's another thing if you have to run a business, get clients, represent those clients, file the pleadings, attend court. That's not something that a judge necessarily could impart to you, you know, especially if they've been a judge for a long time and have been out of private practice for a while. I think shadowing an attorney or finding a mentor who can assist along the way, because there's a lot more that goes into running your own business and being a lawyer on top of it. There are so many more issues with management and administration, you know, insurance and staffing and if you're going to hire, you know, an assistant, and that is something. Of course, the Florida Bar has resource support for that, and the local Jacksonville Bar does. They have, in the Jax Bar, if you join it, they have their different committees and groups, and there is the sole practitioner group, and so they gather together, I think, once a month, and they're a resource for each other to exchange information as well. So that's something that could assist. But if you're asking if between working for a judge or shadowing a lawyer, if your interest is opening your own office, I would say shadowing a lawyer would probably be most effective. Yes, did I see a hand back here? No. Okay. Well, what else can I speak to you all about? Yes?
Well, I was just curious, which role do you find more challenging? Being an attorney or being a judge?
You know, they both have their challenges. I mean, I am supremely happy doing what I'm doing now. I'm very professionally satisfied. I was as well as a lawyer. I really enjoyed getting in there and arguing logically and legally on behalf of my client to try to convince them. I mean, there's just something so uniquely pleasing about that. And I'll tell you, when I became a judge, it was very hard at first, because it was hard to take off that, you know, attorney hat and wear the judge hat, where I'm supposed to just be the neutral arbiter. You know, I'd be sitting in trials, I'm like, oh, I could do that closing argument. I want to do that closing argument. It was really tough. But, obviously the challenges of a judge is constantly trying to do the right thing, rule the right way. In criminal, it's imposing sentence, what is fair to the defendant, what is good for our community, and balancing those two interests, of course, within the bounds of the law. Oftentimes very difficult decisions, and even in civil, very difficult legal decisions oftentimes with complex cases, medical malpractice issues and expert witnesses and the like. So I can't say one is more challenging than the other, it's just different challenges. Yeah. I think there was a hand, yes.
What would you say is the minimum amount of years to be an attorney, to go from attorney to a judge? And when would you stop having a mentor as an attorney and go into having a mentor as a judge, because you're trying to go into that transition?
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I never had a lapse of having a mentor. I had a mentor at the state attorney's office for my 7 years. I had a mentor the 12 years I was at the firm. Then I was appointed as a judge, and immediately I had a mentor as a judge. So I've had a mentor my 24 years of my career. Now, in terms of how long to be a lawyer, that really depends. It depends if you are going to seek a judgeship through an appointment. Of course, that depends on the administration that's in office, but currently, it being Governor Scott, he likes people with experience, not, of course, first of all, the law requires at a minimum 5 years. You can't apply for a judge unless you've been an attorney in the state of Florida for 5 years. But Governor Scott likes experience, likes varied experience, and wants people with sufficient experience to be effective judges. So I can't tell you there's a magical number there. I've been a lawyer 20 years, but clearly there's people who've been appointed or elected who've been lawyers a lot less. That's it. So any question? I know is there a mix here of 2 L's and 1 L's, 3 L's, or who is?
Yes.
A mix of everyone. Okay. And so is there any other wisdom I can share or piece of advice about your transition perhaps from law student to lawyer? Yes.
What do you think, based on your experience, is your best skill for having as a litigator?
For having as a litigator, listening. You think as a litigator that you're in court, it's the talking, it's the showmanship, it's the performing in front of the jury. It is listening. Because I'll tell you an error that many young lawyers make, and I made them as a young lawyer. I would prepare for trial, I would write my questions and have my script and do whatever, and the witness is up there, and I'm like, all right, Miss So-and-so, tell me what you saw, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't listening to I'm going on to my next question. I don't know what the witness said. You have to go with flow, you gotta listen, and you have to react that way. Not be so stuck on what you have planned to do, because let me tell you, there is no formulaic trial, there's no formulaic hearing. You have to adjust with the changes. So that, I would say, is the most important. Listening. Yeah. Good questions, a lot of good questions. Yes?
Your Honor, have you ever had any experience with threats, pushback from trials that weren't good, and they wanted vengeance against you personally?
Against me?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting, and I'll tell you, all of us judges, I think it was last year perhaps, had safety training with members of JSO and the SWAT team and the federal marshals teaching us techniques on how to stay alert and stay safe. Don't drive the same route home every day. Don't do this, all sorts of little tips and tricks. Because it does happen. And me in particular, of course, in criminal more than in civil, but in criminal, yes, I had to have a little extra police security detail after there was a particular threat made. It dissipated, we're okay, but I I've told my children, and I have 3 young kids, and I've got a 10-year-old, so that doorbell rings and she is first at the door because she's going to beat her brother, by God, to open that door. No, they cannot. They have to stay and look out this little side window and see who it is. If you don't recognize them, you don't make a peep, you don't open the door. I've had to now teach my children all these little security measures for our safety. So there is that risk. That's with the nature of the job, unfortunately. Yeah. Yes?
You started off addressing that, what in part on new lawyers coming in. What do you think is probably the best, I guess, the most frightening, like deer in headlights situation that you could have as far as after becoming your attorney for the first time and you're trying your first case? Like, what was probably the most frightening experience that you could share about each part of that?
Well, it's just the not knowing, I would think. Because, you are all law students and you learn to be a lawyer and act like a lawyer and think like a lawyer, which involves a lot of preparation. And we've all done that. So we prepare, we like to prepare, we over-prepare, we should prepare. But it's those moments when perhaps you're not as well prepared as you could be, or you've prepared incorrectly, that you are at a hearing and then there's just something you don't know. But the beauty of it is, it's okay to ask. It's okay to say, I'm not sure, what is that? I do that as a judge. When I have hearings in front of me, the lawyers are talking about these topics that clearly they know inside and out, and I don't know, because we cannot possibly know everything. I'll say, listen, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you educate me on that particular matter or on this particular statute or regulation or rule? And it's the same with lawyers. It's okay to ask a judge, to ask counsel, what is that now? Can you explain that, please? I think oftentimes we're embarrassed to do that, especially in front of our client. We don't want to let the client know that we don't know what we're doing. And that again is why I'll keep circling back to finding yourself a good mentor so you can ask those questions before, as to the best of your ability, before your hearing or your trial or your oral argument. Yes. You're welcome. Yes.
From your transition from law student to you work as the attorney's office, what were the type of things that you did to kind of prepare for that new job or new journey?
I went to the office and I shadowed a couple assistant state attorneys before my official start date so that I could watch. So I could see there every day. And shadowing, not just going to trial and sit and watch a trial, sit in their office, watch them do what they have to do. And I did that for a couple days. So it wasn't completely foreign to me when I started. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest doing that anywhere because I don't think anyone would turn you down. I think that's perfectly acceptable. And in fact, they may be impressed by the fact that you want to go earlier to see how things are done. Yeah. Well, I didn't have really officially prepared remarks. I was just told, that the groups wanted to hear about my journey and my path, and hopefully in doing so, I could impart upon you just a couple of words of wisdom or little nuggets that you can take with you and use in your transition from law student to new lawyer. And for those of you who see yourselves staying in Jacksonville to practice law, I do encourage you to join the Jacksonville Bar, to join one of the many legal organizations that we have, from the Jacksonville Women Lawyers to the Perkins Bar to the Hispanic Bar to Jacksonville Area Legal Aid. They're always looking for good help and involvement, because that's a way that you can not only meet people and network, but give back to this community. If you've chosen to stay here, it really would be your obligation and duty to do that, to give back and become that good community trustee that we also desperately need. So unless there's any other questions, is that long enough? Yes. All right, thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Everyone, thank you for attending. I hope that you signed in on the sign-in sheets. And as Judge Salvador said, it's so important to have a mentor. How many of you all have gone to the minority mentoring picnic before? Okay, they changed it this year and it will be in February. We will be taking a bus down, just like we always do. And as she said, I think that's a great opportunity for you to look for a mentor. I have a mentor as well. I have Dr. Epps and Dr. Velez I talk with quite often, who are in my field of study. I get advice from them all the time. I have other diversity officers, one at San Diego State University, other places that I contact when I have an issue or question that I'm unsure of. So again, I definitely think that is really important. I think the only stupid question is the one that's not asked. I think that we do learn a lot when we ask, and I think it's just the tone that we ask it in that will make the difference. And I wish you all a good night, and if you maybe want a couple picture opportunities, we could do that. And let's thank Judge Salvador again.